Something strange is happening right now. Normal life feels flat. Normal conversations feel boring. Normal moments feel like waste of time. Normal thinking feels overwhelming. And everyone, maybe including you, is slowly losing themselves without even noticing. I was at the gym one day, and a person came in with his headphones on. I wanted to use the bench, but he was sitting on it. So I just reached to him to say that, okay, dude, I want to use the bench. Can you please move elsewhere? I literally had to say it for 5 times in a row that, hey brother, hey brother, hey brother, just to make him listen. And then finally, on the sixth call, he accidentally looked at me that this person is calling me. And then he took out his headphones and said, what happened? I said, I want to use this bench. And then he was like, oh, I'm sorry. And then he moved. So, what was he doing? He was scrolling reels with his headphones on while sitting on the bench. This isn't rare anymore. I literally encounter people who put on their phones in front of the machines while working out with videos on just to finish each set. And this actually extends beyond the gym incident, like consuming content while meals, like consuming any form of stimulation, like music while walking, or scanning for post-worthy moments or photo-friendly spots. At first, these look like normal behavior, but the more I observe the modern behavior, the more I notice that people struggle to sit with themselves. People reach for stimulation the moment reality becomes quiet. The modern human is exposed to more inputs in a single day than many pre modern humans experienced in months. Many people now experience life less through direct experience and more through algorithmically filtered slices of reality. The strange thing is that despite access to more stimulation than any generation in history, people do not appear equally happier or more fulfilled. In fact, the opposite happens. People are more scattered, they are more confused, they are more anxious. In fact, digital environments are beginning to feel better than real life. Logically, that's why people spend more time on screens. Screens have become the new environments, and humans effortlessly synchronize with their environment. A child doesn't choose their accent. A child doesn't choose their personality either. If a child is praised for being highly extroverted, then that child will grow up thinking that I'll only be validated if I stay like that. Environment contributes a lot. Language, religion, morality, status hierarchies, political beliefs, even concepts of success, all emerged and spread environmentally. Humans absorb environments. And this is actually the first time in human history that billions of people are living inside a single web. People are absorbing social and emotional intensity at a dangerously high rate. The digital environments are becoming the new constant, and what is repeated in the environments become the new baseline. Humans adapt to repeated environments even if those environments are unhealthy. That's the caveat. And this new baseline influences desires, values, beliefs, and even choices. We do not become who we want to, we become what we are exposed to. And this is good and terrible at the same time, because repeated exposure can literally dictate your entire worldview, even if you don't choose it. I've literally met 20-year-olds who are anxious about their life just because they are exposed to a 20-year-old with a Porsche. Like, that's insane. The human mind doesn't really distinguish between what is really common, what is actually common, and what is algorithmically common. So when someone is constantly exposed to luxury, extreme beauty, hyper productivity, and exceptional transformations every single day, ordinary life starts feeling emotionally smaller in contrast. Even a good life can feel increasingly flat when the comparison scale is infinite. Some argue I don't compare. No, I don't agree. Humans compare. How can you simply override millions of years of evolution? Comparison is an evolutionary mechanism that's built in within us, and it wasn't something harmful. It was how we learned. It was for survival. If a man saw someone hunt better, climb a tree faster, or do anything better, that man, that Stone Age man, tried to imitate that. It was for better survival. And additionally, the comparison scale was finite back then. Comparison didn't stretch beyond the tribe or the village. But now anyone can access anything worldwide. And comparison scale expanded too. This is partly why modern dissatisfaction feels so strange. We have access to more comfort, convenience, entertainment, and opportunity than any of the previous generations, yet simultaneously feel more behind, more restless, and more insufficient. Dissatisfaction is not just created by worsening conditions, it can also be created by inflated expectations. And we can't deny that social media and this whole set of algorithmically optimized media systems are inflating our desires and expectations. You'll always encounter emotional spikes, exceptional 0 to millions, dramatic fad to fits, optimized aesthetics, ideological extremes, and hyper stimulating content because just normal doesn't compete well now. People don't watch normally paced content now. And honestly, I won't be surprised if 90% of the viewers watching this episode would have quit up till now because people have become more restless than a busy CEO. If two sentence doesn't feel stimulating, they simply quit. That's the condition now. And the result? Natural growth feels too slow. Doing nothing feels painful. Work feels emotionally flat. Meals, training, walking, sitting, everything is paired with reels and fonts. People increasingly require layered stimulation simply to tolerate ordinary movements. And the problem, they have begun to feel norm. Use phone for 8 hours a day and nobody says a thing except our parents. People immersed inside overstimulating environments eventually stop perceiving the overstimulation itself because overstimulation itself becomes normal. By the way, it takes me enormous amount of time and effort to synthesize and produce each of these episodes. So if you find that effort and more importantly the content valuable, then you're free to support. Now, back to the episode. People surrounded by algorithmic intensity often fail to notice how deeply their standards, desires, values, emotional rhythms, and perception of reality is being shaped by repeated exposure. And on top of normalization, people are losing their psychological boundaries. What do I mean by that? I mean that everyone is exposed to complete novel things every single day. And people confuse this novelty of being exposed to new people or new things with value. That's how the human mind works. People are literally developing parasocial relationships. A strange feature of the modern life is that many people now know more about strangers than about themselves. They know what famous people say, they know what car they bought, they know an outrage that's happening 20,000 kilometers away from their home. But when you ask a simple question like, what are your values? They go blank because they are always mentally occupied and they say, I'm just being informed. No, there's a difference between being informed and being mentally occupied. If someone is occupied by opinions, by novelty, by what famous people say, that's not called being informed. And that's exactly why I don't prefer to watch news because it doesn't really make sense to me. People say, you should be aware of what's happening in the world, especially my mom. But I feel like outrage, bombing, and all of these things that they market as news are happening from ages. There's nothing surprising, and if the news is genuinely serious enough, it will reach me anyway. I see that people are emotionally invested in things that have no impact on their lives. A person can spend 20 minutes looking at the beach photo or post of an influencer, but just ignore the sunset happening outside their window. Access has become geographically limitless, but psychologically fragmented. The same brain that evolved to live in a tribe is now exposed to 100 social signals daily: status, beauty, success, politics, outrage. Exposure is infinite. There's always someone more richer, smarter, more productive, more successful, more beautiful, more handsome, more charismatic, more interesting. There's always more. It never ends. People compare their relationships to couples they have never actually met, their careers to people on the internet, and their bodies to Instagram photos under best lighting conditions possible. And whatever we are being exposed to feels amplified because it's novel, it's new. A new face, a new personality, a new talking style, and this is not actually the most dangerous part yet. The biggest caveat is that if the mind is constantly being filled with external inputs, then your mental bandwidth is no longer available for direct experience, for direct life experience. Have you ever thought how much of your mental bandwidth is being spent on things that neither improve your life nor require your attention? The answer is massive. The sense of self changes every few days. And this is not accidental. People often say, I use social media for expression, for connection. Maybe that's true to an extent, but the major attraction is validation. Not always explicit, but subtle. A person posts a photo of themselves to see how the world reacts. Someone broadcasts their achievement. Someone posts physique updates. And this is actually me when I used to consume social media and use it in my younger years. Some post their relationships. Some display their lifestyle. And when you confront these people with its validation, they dismiss it. I don't really understand this resistance. Social media is not a personal preference. It's how people pretend not needing validation while still getting it. It's how people display I don't care while still checking how much likes I got. This is just a mini status game people are playing because humans are extremely sensitive to social signals. Their desire to be admired, respected, and seen of as attractive is not something novel. It's not something that took birth just because of social media. Belonging mattered for survival. Approval carried rewards. Rejection could mean exclusion from the tribe. Social media is simply a scaled up version of the same evolutionary mechanism. But the change is rejection or acceptance doesn't directly cause survival now, but the same evolutionary mechanism exists, and the result is self worth becomes deeply attached to likes, validation, and catching up with trends. And if you're still skeptical about it, then just notice one thing. People are posting what they never thought they would express online, they would post online, just because it's trending or it grabs immense attention. The most obvious one is skin showing. The more skin someone shows, the more attention they get. And this is actually no longer something to debate because we all see it. Social media is simply an accepted norm that makes validation seeking behavior seem less cheap. Nobody talks about it, but the same goes with scrolling. Of course, it offers novelty, that's obvious, but more importantly, it offers validation in another form. Algorithms learn what captures your attention, what you agree with, and what keeps you watching. And this actually begins a validation loop. The algorithm learns, the algorithm returns more of what holds you. You engage more, the loop strengthens. The feed starts to feel familiar because it resembles the person watching it. So indirectly, people are being fed versions of themselves, their insecurities, their attractions, their preferences, their ambitions. And the most powerful thing about this whole system is that insecurity has an economic value. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's reality. An insecure person is more valuable to the attention economy than a secure person. Because a person who is not searching for how to get a better jawline is harder to hook than a person who is constantly anxious about their appearance, about their status, about their communication, about their body, about their image. In other words, it's easier to hook insecure people. It's easier to hook people who feel insufficient. Entire industries revolve around perceived inadequacy. They create a gap and then sell the bridge. And honestly, this is not something evil. It's not an evil practice because bridging the gap is what value means. Like, I'm writing a book currently. That book offers a bridge to people who want to understand themselves and the systems we are living in. So that's kind of a value offer because it's not hunting for insecurity. But social media as a whole is doing something more. Every scroll presents another person who appears more attractive, more successful, more disciplined, and more fulfilled. People are exposed to idealized extremes, and comparison is the natural response. The body is never lean enough, the income is never good enough, the progress is never fast enough, the face is never attractive enough. The problem isn't that humans want more, humans always wanted more. The problem is this constant feeling of inadequacy, of the urge to catch up with trends, of seeking validation by any means possible. The problem is that the finish line keeps moving. It's simply a hamster's wheel. So, here's something to think about. If social media is shaping what you see, what you think, and even how you value yourself, then how much of what remains is actually yours? And before we move deeper into this discussion, we need to acknowledge that human desires cannot be self generated from a void. We learn from the outside, there's always an external anchor. But what's missing right now is a real space of reflection, a real space of thought. Of course, there's comparison, validation, beauty standards, attention span, but that's just the surface. The deeper consequence is the gradual dissolution of the self. most unknowingly escape the gap called solitude. Not physical solitude, but mental solitude. Solitude doesn't just mean that you need to sit alone. You can sit alone in a room with hundreds of opinions, trends, advices, and train of thoughts that is being produced by those hundred opinions. So solitude in our context isn't about being alone. It's the reduction of external influence pulling you from different directions because the mankind has reached to a point where training without headphones, walking without phone, and having meals without television have become rare events. Just ordinary existence is seen as boring. Every empty space is filled with any kind of stimulation humanly possible. But the human mind needs space to process experiences, to examine beliefs, discover values, and actually think. Meanings, values, beliefs all emerge when the mind has enough bandwidth to work with. The problem is not that people are exposed to a lot of things. Sometimes exposure can be valuable. The problem is that the stream never stops for long enough to be really thought about. Opinions keep stacking over, desires keep stacking over, and the result is obvious. Values, beliefs, preferences all become more of a mimicry than personally reflected choices. And one thing you'll surely resonate with is that people have formed dependency on external inputs to just think. Instead of thinking, what do I really value? They are waiting for external forces to tell them what to value. The weightage people have begun to give to status, admiration, appearance, and visibility has got bigger than one's personal choices. External metrics are overpowering internal preferences, and now the argument isn't really about social media, it's about solitude. Because solitude is one of those few places where external influence weakens. It's one of those few places where you can think without being judged by the world, where desires can emerge naturally instead of being influenced by the most trending thing, where values can form without the need to pretend goodness. The most direct way to know yourself can simply be the ability to sit with yourself. Because if you can't tolerate solitude, then the crowd is more than willing to tell you what to do. You'll be assigned goals, beliefs, values, preferences, choices that you never asked. The funny thing is that people believe social media is self expression, but self expression requires a self to express. Now, finally, to close this, I'm not throwing an ideology to you. I am just putting down my opinion. What I ask of you is to reflect on this, to really think about it. You're free to reject, you're free to accept. Stop using social media to fuel your ego. Stop using social media to collect hits of validation. Stop using social media to escape your life. Until you keep running for approval and escape, you'll do what others want you to do.